Again, I'm honored and grateful to be your friend. Here is Ted.
Thank you. It's very nice of you, Ali. Appreciate it. Good morning. Can I stand down here? Will you be able to see me okay? I feel I don't want to be that disconnected. It's great to see so many people here, friends, people that I'll get a chance to work with now via our association with FedBid. Right after my speech, I am flying to Boston. I have my red tie on. I know there's lots of Caps fans here, and I really appreciate all of the support. The fan base has just been amazing. So I've been asked to talk to you about leadership, and I do think that the people equation in all organizations is what makes the difference between greatness and really just kind of mailing it in. We see that in all professions. You certainly see that in sports. We use the same sticks, we use the same pucks, have the same uniforms, same dimensions on the ice in every arena, and it really does come down to the individual performance and how they bond as a team. And so I thought I'd tell you my story. And I'm an only child of a Greek immigrant father and mother, and my mom and dad didn't go to college. And somehow I was fortunate enough to end up at Georgetown University. And didn't realize how blessed I was to go to Georgetown. Great school. I'm now on the board of Georgetown. I'm very involved with admissions. Suffice to say that if I had applied today to Georgetown, I never would have been accepted. And Georgetown has this Jesuit ideal, and the Jesuits were about connecting the dots. How do you take intellectual pursuits, matters of faith, matters of physicality, real world, and connect them to create your own point of view. Today we would call that a mashup. Back then, they talked about development of the whole person. It's the Georgetown ideal. And so my junior year, I was forced to write a senior thesis, 1976. And I was given a mentor. He was a 75-year-old Jesuit priest named Father Durkin, who honestly became the most important person in my life next to my parents, because he was a mentor. And it really showed me early on how mentoring can change people's lives, help establish people on a track. And so as a leader, mentoring and touching young people to get them to think and act the right way really pays unbelievable dividends. I'm an active donor at Georgetown. I'm one of the active alumni. My connected spirit to the school really started because Father Durkin, I feel this huge debt of gratitude to. So I've been paying that back since 1975. So make a long story short on how I got into industry, I had to write a thesis. And I was like any other lazy student, what am I going to write on? And so I read a book by Ernest Hemingway. It was called Old Man in the Sea. Has anyone read Old Man in the Sea? I picked it because it was short. You open the book, and I think the first chapter was, "It was a good day. The sun was hot. The water cool." Chapter 2. So this is my kind of book. So I read this book. It was fantastic, and there was a lot of religious overtones in it, and trying to find the meaning in the book, and I liked it. And so I went to the library. Remember, you used to go to the library and check books out, hope they had the book available. And I read the second book called Across the River and Into the Trees. And it was like this big. And the first chapter was like 40 pages. It was really different. And so then I got another book, and it was really different. And I had this idea that why was this book, Old Man and the Sea, dated 1950, and it was really thin and written like a journalist, where Hemingway had started life as a journalist. And I said, I bet you he wrote this book early in his career, had fallen out of favor with the critics, needed some money, and kind of resurrected this story and rushed it out, and that's why it's in the 50s. That was my idea. So I went to Father Durkin, and he said, that's really interesting. How will we prove it? I said, I have no idea. And he said, let's use a computer. Let's use a computer. And in 1975, 76, your view of a computer was HAL from the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. There was one computer on the campus of Georgetown University, an IBM 360 mainframe in the registrar's office, still being used. Punch cards. And so we came up with this theorem where I worked with a linguistics major, and she created 17 measures for the computer to compare. Number of words per sentence, sentences per paragraph, pronoun references. And then they made me type in the first 5,000 words of articles written in the 30s, books written in the 40s, books written in the 50s, and we asked the computer, where and when do you think the book was written based on all of these measures? Pretty basic. And the computer said the book was written in 1939, not 1951. And it was kind of breakthrough. It was the first time a computer had been used in the arts. And it got published in some erudite publication. It was called The Computer and the Humanities or something, this little newsletter. And I remember Father Durkin, I won the prize for the best senior thesis. And Father Durkin, when he introduced me and I gave a little talk, said, this is where liberal arts and technology come together. If you've read the biography of Steve Jobs by Walter Isaacson, which I recommend you do, when Jobs was asked 3 years ago, why was Apple Computer such a valuable company, he said, Apple is the place where liberal arts and technology come together. And I remember reading that, saying, man, Father Durkin was genius. That was 1975. So I used that first little bit of renown and skill set when I graduated to get my first job at a computer company that did a lot of work with the government, but it was really the first populist computer company. It was called the Wang Laboratories. And it's amazing now when I tell people this story, women were just really entering the workforce. And they were administrative jobs. My mother was a secretary. They typed and filed. We forget typing. Now you talk to, we typed and we had the little whiteout. We made mistakes. It was boring and tedious work. And Wang digitized that process. I watched as we made technology consumable for the masses. And we increased productivity and made a job more enjoyable. And Wang became known as a word processing provider. And we sold a lot of equipment. And I started in the marketing department and then ran communications. And I was being exposed at a really young age to the mini computer revolution. So I started life on an IBM 360 and then watched as mini computers and now desktops to a wide population were first getting started. And in 1979, I went to the West Coast Computer Fair. West Coast Computer Fair, the homebrew crew. They were the early pioneers in the personal computer business. And I bought an Apple II computer. I met Steve Jobs in 1979. And I bought what today you wouldn't say is a computer. It was you bought a keyboard from one supplier and a screen from another supplier and the motherboard from Apple. And then you went to another booth and there was a guy who wrote an instruction manual on how it all came together, and you paid $5 and he Xeroxed on site and put it in a baggie. It was like an undercover drug buy. That's what I felt like. I remember coming home and having a friend who was a mechanical engineer. We put it together, and I had 2 pieces of software aside my little Apple II computer. The CP/M operating system. Before there was DOS and Windows, there was something called the CP/M operating system, and VisiCalc. Actually, there was also the PFS database. That was it. And I went to a grocery store. I was a bachelor, and I was in line, and at the checkout counter, I saw a TV guide. I had never seen a TV guide in our home, and there was a starburst that said the #1 best-selling magazine in America. I was shocked. This is the #1 best-selling magazine in America, and I'd never seen it. So I purchased it and came home that night, and if you've ever seen a TV guide, the front of the book is interviews with television show directors and actors and the like, and the back of the book is a directory. What programs are running at what networks at what time? I remember saying, I can't believe this is the #1 best-selling magazine in America. Threw it out, and I went and sat in front of my Apple II. And I got a whack on the side of the head. I'm looking at this screen, and I went, this looks like a television screen. And I have programs, and TV Guide was talking about programs. And I had just come from this show where Dr. Bob Metcalf was talking about intranetworks and networks. He eventually created Ethernet. I said, well, TV Guide talks about networks, only it's NBC, ABC. This vocabulary, this delivery I bet you this is all going to come together. I bet you won't be able to distinguish computers and televisions and content and delivery and networks at some point. I mashed up an idea. And it was burning in me. I was an entrepreneur. I started my first business on the campus of Georgetown University. The bicentennial summer, I started a snow cone vending business. Red, white, and blue snow cones. Be a patriot, eat a snow cone. variable pricing. The weather's in the 80s, $1. The weather's in the 90s, $1.50. Still, to this day, the best margin product I've ever sold. And so I had this idea, I'll start a database and a TV guide-like publication for the PC industry. And I started a company. My first company was called LIST, the Leonsis Index to Software Technology. And its first outcome, its first product was a publication. The front of the magazine was interviews with Bill Gates and with people who were buying and using personal computers. And the back of the book was a directory. What products worked for what, because back then there was no universal operating system. There were different programs for the Apple or the PC and the like, and there were rumors that IBM was about to create a PC division in Boca Raton, Florida. And I started my company in Florida to be near this birth of a whole new industry, the PC business. And I launched my product in the month that Time magazine named the personal computer the Man of the Year, 1981. I shipped my product, and boy did we hit. It was an outrageous success. We were everywhere, and 9 months into the business, a very big company came to acquire my company. And I was programmed, like all of us, especially if you're first generation, that if you work really hard, you'll go to a good school. If you work really hard in school, you'll get good grades. If you get really good grades, you'll get a good job. If you get a good job, you'll make a lot of money. If you make a lot of money, you'll be successful. That was kind of the programming around the American dream. So I graduated first in my class. I started my first company. I sold my company. I was 26 years old for almost $70 million. It's a lot of money. But for someone whose parents had made $30,000 combined income, it was life-changing. And I declared victory. I won, I thought. I bought my parents a house. I bought my dad a new car. I bought stuff. You got to get stuff. And all of a sudden, girls liked me. That Georgetown ideal, I was kind of being pulled away a little bit. It wasn't about whole person development. It started to become about stuff, because I won. I kind of got to the answer very early in life. And it didn't feel that good. And so I started to be a little bit angsting. And then one day I got on the wrong airplane. And if you read my book, you'll find that I had a reckoning. I had a life-changing endeavor. And everyone in this room will have a reckoning. Reckonings come in all sizes. Some will break your heart. An aspiration won't be met. You'll have a financial setback. Someone you love will pass on unexpectedly. You'll have a hell. We all will have reckonings. I had a reckoning. Plane I was on, all sorts of issues. And it's very, very sobering. Jettisoning fuel, landing gear issues, 35 minutes to prepare. And the airlines do as good a job as they can, but essentially it's brace. That's their training. Seems like a hollow. In fact, I remember, keep your head down, and I was looking up, and the flight attendant was yelling at me. I was like, I can't believe you're yelling at me. Seems like the wrong kind of service to be provided. And on the way down, you start to take stock. And some people were panicked. There was a lot of angst. Some people were crying. Some people were praying. I frankly started to pray. I'm not that religious. And I got a couple of moments in the prayer, and it felt really inauthentic, to be blunt. I felt kind of snarky inside. I was like, yeah, like if God's listening and he's tuned in right now to my channel, I'm sure he or she goes, oh, sure, now you need me. Now you want to develop a relationship. So I kind of reverted to type, and I tried to come up with a soundbite. Please let me through this, and I promise I'll leave more than I take. That was my deal, if you will. And obviously, we made it through, and I had faced a reckoning, and I had changed, but I had no tools to do anything different. And so I made a feeble attempt to try and measure what would be different in my life, and I made a list of 101 things to do before I die. It's on my blog, it's in my book, it's floating around the internet. I'm not very proud of it. I mean, I did it stream of consciousness as a young man that wasn't self-actualized yet on what would define a fully developed life. I made a life list. I had a reckoning. I made a list of things to do. I went, hey, that's what we do in business. Our businesses have reckonings. Product isn't good. Financials didn't meet what we thought. There's organizational stress. What do? You kind of make a list of here's what we're going to do to change. And I went, geez, companies are like people. They are born, they develop, organizations change, they mature, they have their reckonings, there's something to this. There's something to personal development and organizational development that if you can find the right touch points of personal development alongside organizational development, you'll be successful. And that was still my driver, being successful, having a successful life, taking advantage of the mulligan around success. And then I went on a field trip to the Library of Congress with my son. Who here works for the Library of Congress? And you have that display of the Declaration of Independence. If you haven't gone to the Library of Congress, you need to. It's a spectacular building, organization, and they've digitized the drafts of the Declaration of Independence. Like we forget someone wrote it. Founding paper, white paper of our country, the business plan of our country. And someone wrote a first draft, and then Benjamin Franklin wrote, "Are you daft? What were you thinking?" I wouldn't say it like that. And they have every red line of the Declaration of Independence, every line edited. And the only phrase that wasn't edited was life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I will tell you, after I wrote my book, was published, the head of the library. So we have a real romantic and good story. We did just find another edit. Someone had suggested life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. And Thomas Jefferson said, no way. So, pursuit of happiness. I felt terrible. I was on a field trip with my son, and I was programming my son the way my parents programmed me. You're going to go to a really good prep school, you're going to go to an Ivy League college, you're going to get a job for a couple of years, you're going to go to Harvard Business School, you're going to be successful. That's what we do. I was like, geez, our economy, our democracy, our country's founded on life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. No one had ever talked to me about happiness. And so I said, well, I will become a student of happiness. Let's figure out what makes people happy, what makes organizations happy. And so I started to participate. There's a program at UPenn, something at Harvard, the Dalai Lama. There's a lot of work around the science of happiness. And the overlap between personal happiness and organizational happiness is dramatic. And the basic theorem was, if you're successful, it doesn't mean you're going to be happy. A couple of weeks ago, there was the Whitney Houston medical report. She was the #1 best-selling female artist for a decade. And the toxicology report that came out was mind-numbing. It was like Elvis, like Michael Jackson. It was like, these are the most successful artists. They can't be happy. They take their own life, basically. But you know, if you're happy, you can be successful. That's really the theorem change. Success doesn't lead to happiness, but happiness leads to success. That was a very big pivot for me. And I bet you happy companies can be successful. I don't think successful companies can always generate happiness for their employees or their shareholders. So I went on this journey, and what my book is about, the Cliff Notes version, which I'll give you, is that there are 5 traits that come out of the process of recognizing and internalizing a reckoning, making your list, your plan, and then executing along these 5 tenets, if you will. The first, from a personal standpoint, is that you are an active participant in multiple communities of interest. It seems basic. We're social animals. I was flipping through the channels, and CNN was on, and they had the diary of a serial murderer who had been captured, and they interviewed the neighbors. And guess what the next door neighbor said? He was a quiet man. He spent all of his time alone. He didn't mingle much with people. When you do something really, really bad, what is your worst sentence and fear? You're going to solitary confinement. It's not we're sending you to the party, not going to church. We're social beings. Let's look at business. Most successful product I was ever associated with was AIM, AOL's instant messaging product. I helped birth it. I may have sent the first instant message to my wife. Important. What was it about? Managing your communities of interest. We never spent 1 penny in marketing. At its peak, we had 300 million people around the world who had downloaded that piece of software. And every hour in prime time, 14 million people were using that product. Facebook's about to go public. It's worth $100 billion. What's Facebook all about? Managing your communities of interest. I'm friends with the founder of Starbucks, Howard Schultz. Howard, what business are you in? I'm in the neighborhood community business. I want friends and neighbors coming in, knowing the baristas, smelling the coffee, and if they buy something, cool, I'm giving them wireless, let you watch movies, do your resumes if you don't have a job, use it as an office. We're all part of the same community. And hopefully you buy a cup of coffee. There's nothing not positive that comes personally from being a community organizer. When we were writing the book, there was the race for the presidency. And you'll see at the end, we have these 5 tenets, and we said, okay, based on the personal traits of all of the candidates, who will win this election? And as I step you through it, we said Barack Obama. People were sneering. What's his background? He was a community organizer. It's like, wow, that's like really important. Give him a big check mark there, as opposed to I'm a high priest, I'm behind the screen, I'm not going to understand what's going on in the community. So being an active participant, multiple communities of interest, number 1. Number 2, high levels of self-expression. Again, because we're social, we want our voice to be heard. There's a reason there's 250 million active bloggers. I wrote a book. I make movies. I'm a suit. But I invented a board game. You exercise that other part of your personality. I've been married for 25 years. Love my wife, love my family. I get into fights with my wife. You know what the central theme of all of our disagreements, our whole relationship is? You know what she says to me? Hey, you're not listening to me. Sound familiar? The ultimate sign of disrespect. You're not listening to me. You make a product and it misses the mark. You go, well, why did that happen? We weren't listening to the market. The market's talking clearly, but you're not listening. People are unhappy in the organization. Why? We don't feel like our voice is being heard. Activating self-expression, vital. Come to a Caps game sometime. First, I activated a blogosphere. There used to be like 2 media outlets that covered us. Now there's hundreds and hundreds. I reached out to people who were self-expressing on message boards and said, you really ought to be in the media business. You ought to create a blog. I'll allow you to go to the press booth. I'll get you into the games. Blog away. I don't care what you write. Just write. Just self-express. The other day there was Elvetchkin. A fan showed up as an Elvis impersonator wearing number 8. Fantastic. We have the Capstronaut. If you've ever seen the Capstronaut, guy shows up at games in a NASA official astronaut uniform. It's so hot. I met him. He has a fan inside. These 3 young gentlemen show up in red prophylactics. I don't know what it means. We've sold out 150 straight games. The more we've activated self-expression, the better our business. The more you listen and allow people to self-express and hear, the better. I started a business. One of my entrepreneurial ventures is a business called Snag Films. Go to snagfilms.com. Do not go to stagfilms.com. I told the buddy, and he goes, "You're a pornographer now?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Stag Films is..." I said, "No, stupid, it's Snag Films." Snag Films allows, we have 3,000, 4,000 movies in the database, and it allows you to self-express. You can grab a film that you relate to, bring that film onto your blog or Facebook news feed or retweet it, and self-express. You donate pixels and help virally market the movie as your badge of honor. There are 30,000 physical movie screens in North America in 8,000 buildings. And that industry is over 100 years old, theatrical movie business. I started Snag Films less than 4 years ago. We now have 300,000 virtual movie theaters. We started a brand new way to distribute film, turning individuals into virtual movie theater operators because they want to self-express. They want to share a creative endeavor to their community of interest. Another mashup. And so communities of interest and listening and developing high levels of self-expression personally and organizationally. Vital. Number 3, you have high levels of personal empathy. As a leader, empathy is the trait that I think is most powerful, but it's also most fundamental. There's probably a law in Washington, D.C. that says if you're giving a speech and someone was brave enough to sit in the first row, if you went over and messed up their hair, it's against the law. Probably an arrestable offense in Washington, D.C. But I don't do it because I have basic empathy. I've been in the first seats. And if someone came and picked on me, it would be embarrassing, it would hurt my feelings. So we have this basic covenant. I won't mess your hair, you don't mess my hair. High levels of empathy get you monuments built on the mall. Latest monument that was built was the Martin Luther King Memorial. Reverend Martin Luther King. Total community organizer. Unbelievable high levels of self-expression. Speeches that resonate to today. I have a dream. Unbelievable self-expression. Unbelievable levels of empathy. I saw in a very small way how empathy works organizationally when I concluded my purchase of the Wizards and the Verizon Center. As Ali said, I'm a big deal locally because I own some sports teams. I bought the Wizards and I get the Verizon Center. And the Washington Post does an interview with me, and I'm acting like a big shot. On self-reflection, I was an ass. This is what I'm gonna do to make it better. And I'm gonna make sure that the bathrooms are clean and that place is spotless. And as soon as I said that, I went, oh gosh, did I just create a gigantic faux pas? I have no data that says whether the business is clean or dirty. I've never met the cleaning crew. I've just insulted an entire department of people who I've never met publicly on the Washington Post. So the article ran. I ran into the office and I said, I need to see the senior management of that department. And the first thing I did was I apologized. I said, I apologize. I was really wrong and I'm sorry. And it won't happen again. And even though there were extenuating circumstances in the Q&A, I wouldn't like my new owner saying that about me without having met me. So I honestly apologize. And they were very appreciative of that. And then I said, I want to learn how you do your job. In fact, I want to clean the building with you and see what that's like. And one guy said, okay. Now it was the summer and the Washington Mystics were playing. And the Mystics get about 8,000 people coming to a game, not 20,000. He said, all right, next Sunday's a Mystics game. Come to the game, and after the game, we'll have you clean the women's bathrooms, and then you'll work on the picking crew. And you can see how we do it, and if you can add some value, we'll be all ears. I said, deal. On Wednesday of that week, the White House calls. It says President Obama and his daughter would like to come to the Mystics game. Would you host them? I think I can do that. They send 300 Secret Service agents. I'm not 300. The night arrives, like 30 vans, trucks show up at Verizon. I'm waiting there, the door opens, the President of the United States and his daughter. And I walk him to his seats, and he says, please sit with me. I'm a big shot. 3 hours with the President of the United States. I didn't have 3 hours of small talk. What do you say? What I do remember one conversation. He says, I know a little bit about you, and I know your dad was a Greek immigrant. I bet you growing up your parents wanted you to be president of the United States. And I said, yeah, that's kind of the standard dream. And he said, well, when I was growing up, I always wanted to own an NBA team. So we're sitting talking, the photographers, they break into ESPN Live, President of the United States, game owner Ted Leonsis, pictures on the AP. I won! President leaves. Guy says, okay, let's go clean the women's bathroom. I clean the women's bathroom. Guys, you haven't lived till you've cleaned a public space woman's bathroom. And I watched the work that goes in to taking off water stains and cleaning the sinks and the mirrors and emptying the garbage and mopping the floors and cleaning the toilets and getting on your knees with the spray to get the water off. It is not a fun job, but I did it, and it was great for me. And then I worked on the picking crew. Picking crew is probably the worst job imaginable. You walk down the arena steps and you lean over and you pick up whatever's on the ground, and you have two plastic bags, recyclable and garbage. You have to remember, public space, it's, oh, you finished half your beer? Just drop it, spill it. Nachos? Throw it on the floor. Peanuts? Stomp those peanuts. Aisle L? Toenail and fingernail clippings. Somebody came to the game and gave themselves a manicure and a pedicure. And I would pick up, then someone came and swept, someone came and Windexed the seats, and then someone came and mopped the aisle, kind of like in a conveyor. And I did one whole section. It was like doing 1,000 sit-ups. And it was awful. And I learned a lot. So now it's 2 years later. We have 1,500 employees, full and part-time. Not a single person has ever referenced to me, remember that time you were with the president? That was really cool. But the story of my apologizing and cleaning the women's bathroom and working on the picking crew has stayed redolent in the organization. Set an example for everyone that if you do something stupid, you apologize. Before you have a strong point of view and conviction about leading someone, how about doing the job? How are you going to add value if you don't know what they do? And so empathy, basic, higher levels of personal empathy, make you happy, make your organization happy, make your organization much more effective. Fourth, you get out of the I and into the we. And in that we setting, you volunteer and give back. Ali talked about that in his introduction. It's the act of getting out of I. I'm always nervous when I meet individuals or people go, I did this and I do that and I need this and I need that, but enough about me. What do you think about me? Collective experiences are much more powerful. I flew back with Alex Ovechkin from Toronto a couple of years ago. He had 3 trophies: leading goal scorer, MVP of the league, and the sports writers had voted him most valuable player. So he had 3 trophies in the plane. He had every individual accomplishment. And he said it feels empty. They can have it all back for a Stanley Cup. Something that we accomplish as a team. I've already won these awards. I always wanted to win these awards. Now I got them. I don't feel complete. I don't feel that good. I don't have the shared one. What are the most successful new tools that we use in business? Wikis, answer.coms, collective, getting your arms around things. What is FedBid kind of about? Creating communities of interest and being able to use that information and data around the community to get a good deal, to drive costs out, to help with a higher calling, which I'll talk about. And so volunteering and giving back provides individuals and organizations with unbelievable perspective. I get personally involved with the charities that I work with, and then I write big checks. Activating volunteerism is vital for your organization. I can't tell you how many walks I end up doing on the mall. Why? It's a collective experience. You're one of many. I love going to Caps games and seeing everyone in red, just sharing in that experience. I was with a rock star on Sunday, a guy who's in the Dave Matthews Band. He's played in front of big audiences. His name is Boyd Tinsley. It was his first hockey game. He came up to me afterwards and gave me this big hug, and he said, that was an incredible, that was as close an experience of a rock band as I've ever had. You had 20,000 people all about one thing collectively. And the thing they had in common was your team. They were a community all focused on the same thing. And so that perspective you get from volunteering and giving back solves a lot of your personal problems. Someone's complaining, it's too cold in my office. My boss isn't warm and cuddly. I don't like my laptop. And then you go volunteer for wounded warriors. One of my movies was a movie called The Fighting Chance. And I met the most incredible person at a Wounded Warriors event. He was a speaker. And I said, ladies and gentlemen, dim the lights and welcome our next speaker, Mr. Kyle Maynard. And the curtains part, and someone comes out and you couldn't understand what you were seeing at first. This young man was born without arms. His arms end here, and legs. So he's from the knees, no arms, and then his feet are in his knees backwards. And this young man comes out, kind of bounds out, and then you focus on him, and he's one of the most handsome, beautiful people you've ever seen. He's so handsome, Bruce Weber, one of the most famous photographers, has used him as a model in fashion ads for one of the big brands, Abercrombie and Fitch, I think it is. But I mean, it's startling when you see this young man. And he comes out, and his speech was to the wounded warriors, "You lucky bastards. You have 2 legs and 1 arm? Holy cow, what I would give to have 2 legs and 1 arm." He played football as a kid. He bench presses 400 pounds. He was an all-American wrestler. What the movie was about was he decided he wanted to fight in a mixed martial arts cage match. And signed up to do it, and then the internet got involved, freak show, don't allow this, and he had to sue, go all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court to get permission to live this. But while he was giving this speech, all of a sudden, these soldiers had great empathy. And they realized they were a part of a community. And they were watching this young man who self-expressed through writing a best-selling book and now was having a movie made of his life. And by getting out of the eye, oh my God, I was serving my country, I lost my arm, I lost my leg. It was, if Kyle can do all this and born with no arms and no legs, I'm ready to rock. It was an unbelievably uplifting experience. And so personally volunteering and giving back and activating your organizations to do so, very powerful. And lastly, that you find the higher calling in all of your pursuits. At AOL, we never articulated that we wanted to be a $10 billion company that built $150 billion of market cap. That's what happened. We talked about creating a media that was more powerful, more valuable than the major media before us, the telephone and the television. We had a higher calling in what we pursued. We were the #1 performing stock on all of Wall Street, better than Microsoft, better than Google, for a decade, the decade of the 90s. And then we bought Time Warner. As I outlined in my book, I retired because I knew we had lost our way when the first meeting of the combined organization, there's 100 of us now in this big room, $40 billion company, 100,000 employees. And I said, what is our mission as a combined company? And I was told $11 billion of EBITDA. I went, you're kidding me. You think like a father's having breakfast with his wife and kids, and the daughter says, Daddy, what are you doing today? I'm going to help generate EBITDA. What is EBITDA? kind of an intangible. And I said, we can't say that. And then it was, okay, well, we want $1 billion in synergies. That was the second order higher calling. Lost our way. I see it personally with my sports teams. It is wonderful to sell a lot of tickets. It is wonderful to make the playoffs 5 years in a row. It is wonderful. Our game on Sunday was the #1 television rating for a playoff game in 15 years. 3.5 million people watched that game. I'd like us to win a Stanley Cup. That would be the shared collective thing. But a winning sports team brings a community really close together. It bonds fathers and sons and mothers and daughters and friends. It's like a public service. It uplifts the community. I had a personal experience, and I tell the story a lot, and every time I do, my son goes, "Not again." It's like, so when I was a kid, as I told you, my parents weren't professionals. They didn't have careers. And my dad was a waiter, and sometimes he had people who he served, and they would give him tickets to games. And that's how I got to go to games as a kid. And for my, I think it was 9th or 10th birthday, the New York Jets, I lived in Brooklyn at the time, the New York Jets moved into Shea Stadium, and you could buy season tickets for $7 a game. So there were 7 games in a season. So for $100, my dad bought 2 season tickets, and there were 7 games a year. And I remember those moments unbelievably clearly, because I'd go to church with my mom or Sunday school, and I'd rush home, I'd change, and then my mother would drive us to a subway station. My dad and I'd take a subway and trade, get on another subway and go to Shea Stadium, and 7 home games. And a couple of years in, the Jets qualified for the Super Bowl. And they played the Baltimore Colts, 1969. The Jets were 18 points as an underdog. And at the time, it was the greatest upset in sports. The Jets and Joe Namath won the Super Bowl. And it was this electric moment in my house. We were fans, and we were calling people. My dad was hugging me, and we felt like we were a part of the win. We had buy-in. We were season ticket holders. And on Tuesday after the win, there was a ticker tape parade. And my dad took the day off from work, pulled me out of school, and took me to the ticker tape parade. Put me on his shoulders, watching the cars go by, confetti's falling. You're in this community of people. You know, Joe Namath is going by and waving. I mean, it was indelible. That was 1969. So my father passes away, 94 years old, in 2009, 40 years later. And it just so happens, he dies in September, that in December, the New York Jets are now playing the Indianapolis Colts in a playoff game. And the game's on Sunday. It's Saturday morning. I'm on the treadmill in the morning. I'm flipping through the channels, and the NFL channel is playing the Super Bowl game from 1969. And I'm watching the game. It's kind of bad quality, you know. I start thinking about my dad, thinking about my childhood, and I start weeping. I'm just awash in memories and reflection, and I literally hit pause on the treadmill, and I'm weeping. And my wife just happens to walk downstairs with some laundry to go to the laundry room. And she sees me crying. And she runs in and she goes, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" And I go, "The Jets don't need me, but Dad." And my wife goes, "Oh my God, you are pathetic. You're crying over a football game?" And I said, "I now know what business I'm in. I can make grown men cry 40 years after the fact. What other business can do that? 40 years after the fact can activate that strong of a memory. That is unbelievable social responsibility." And it leads me to my final thought. I believe the most successful businesses and employees participate in double bottom line businesses. I believe personally you can create your own balance sheet that has a double bottom line. So when I develop business plans for my organizations, the teams, it's how many tickets are we going to sell? What are the revenues going to be? What are the television ratings going to be? How many t-shirts are we going to sell? Blah, blah, blah. How many goals are we going to score? How many games are we going to win? How many playoff series will we have? Will we win a Stanley Cup? How many charities are we going to support? How are we going to turn 23 millionaires, players, into philanthropists? How will we support our season ticket holders in their charitable pursuits? How many volunteer hours will we activate? How will we grow that side of the balance sheet faster than the revenue side so that we can feel we're giving more than we take? If we're raising ticket prices 8%, we better be able to look in the mirror and say we're enhancing the community experience 100%. Can we give people a feeling that they're getting a 10 times return on their time and their money and their effort? Double bottom line businesses. Doing well by doing good. That's what you guys are all about. You're helping to keep our country safe. You're helping to save taxpayers money. So hopefully they can have better lives and they can then give more money back to their communities. You're in double bottom line pursuits. It's one of the things that attracted me to FedBid. Ultimately, it's about a community of interest. Thousands and thousands of purchasing agents and procurement officers, all with the same demands, same needs around them in a community of interest. Tens of thousands of merchants trying to reach you in very efficient ways. We're going to work on more self-expression. You'll see more content and more services and a more way to allow you to communicate back so that you feel like you're part of a community of interest. Certainly have a higher calling. We need to save money. We need to be more efficient. We empathize with how tough your job is. It's easy for someone on high to say, do more with less, save more money, but not tell you how. And so look for double bottom line pursuits. metric personal balance sheets. I know how many emails I answer. I know how many meetings I attend. How much am I volunteering? How much time am I allocating to self-expression? When was the last time I went on a date with my wife or husband or just went out with my son and said, let's just talk. Put away your iPhone. That's one of the things that is driving me crazy. I like to make eye contact with people, and you can't make eye contact with young people. And so my last 20 years have been not about my list, not about stuff. Stuff is okay. Accomplishment is okay. Winning is okay. But it's not the end product. End product is self-actualized human development, happiness. Organizations that are happy will be much higher performing. The happiest companies generate the most value. And I'll conclude with a little op-ed I wrote in Newsweek about 18 months ago. At AOL, I worked on the first deal with Google, and I got to know one of the founders of Google, Sergey Brin, well. We went on the original press tour, and Sergey is a Russian immigrant. His father escaped the Soviet Union and actually went to University of Maryland, became a math professor there. And the internet, 2.2 billion people around the world using the internet. United States, we have 300 million internet connections. We're small now. China is the #1 internet market. Everyone gets a mobile device. You're online, you connect to the internet. China's the big market. And Google was doing business in China. And if anyone's done business in China, you know if you're in the communications industry, you give carte blanche to the government. They can read the emails, the instant messages, see the purchases. And Sergey had a real issue with that. And he made a statement that said, I won't be happy knowing that a student in China could be arrested because he's using Gmail or one of our messaging products. And I really don't want to do business in China. And Wall Street went crazy. What, you crazy? You're going to abandon the world's biggest internet market? And when I heard that, I said, listen to what he said. I'll never be happy knowing that a student could be arrested. Google's about doing no evil. That was his mantra. I said, you watch, Google's going to kill their numbers. This isn't going to hurt Google. Google will add another $100 billion of market cap because they're in pursuit of a much higher calling. That's exactly what happened. Doing the right thing the right way made him happy, and the company became more successful. And so I try to preach and be an evangelist that you have permission to be happy, that being a leader really is about trying to build those communities of interest, step on the gas on personal expression, helping people to get out of the I and into the we, volunteering and giving back, and finding the higher calling in everything that you do. I hope we can make you proud and do great things together with FedBid. I think it's a high quality organization. It was our first investment as a formal fund. It's a major investment, and we think it's ultimately a double bottom line business that's going to do very, very well while it's doing a lot of good. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it very much.
think you have a little bit more time. We have some time set aside for some Q&A, so if anybody wants to step up to any of the mics here, feel free to ask a question. And after this, we're going to have the opportunity for anyone that wants to take a photo with Mr. Leonsis up until he has to board a plane and go win the series a little bit later tonight. Okay?
So I'm from Baltimore, and in 1969, I saw the exact same football game you're talking about, and 40 years later, I was sobbing on a treadmill too, Ted, but for the exact reverse reason. So I just want to remind everybody there's always two sides to every emotional story. But I just want to thank you for your comments today and make sure everybody remembers, let's go Colts. Let's go Caps.
This is Mark Walsh. Mark worked with us in the early days of AOL. It's actually probably one of the few people who's actually in the online business before I was. Worked at Genie, the launch of the birth of commercial services, and then became president of VerticalNet. And Mark and I have remained good friends, and we've just put Mark on the board of directors of FedBid, and he's been very, very active in helping us a lot. Any questions? It's your time to self-express.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, one quick question about the convergence between computers and television. Do you see any more structural hurdles to that happening? Because I remember, as recently as like 18 months ago, I couldn't go buy a cable to plug my laptop into my television, and nobody could ever give me a good reason why. It was because the hardware manufacturers didn't want it, the distribution agents didn't want it. Have those all been swept away at this point, and it's kind of clear sailing, or do you see anything left there?
We live in such a remarkable time when we've become numb to what's happening. Right? So we all have phones, and no one's using phones as phones. Young adults send 60 to 70 text messages a day and get 2 to 3 phone calls a day. So who would have predicted your phone is how you get on the internet and you communicate by thumbing a message? Makes no sense. That's what's happened with phones. What's the #1 killer app now on devices and the internet? Video consumption. It's no longer email. Email usage is way down. I saw an ad yesterday for Cox Cable, who's my cable provider in my neighborhood, and it was a person with an iPad, and they would hold the iPad up to block out the view of the television, and that you now could watch all of your cable on your iPad, that it really was a portable television. Email is no longer used as email. It's used to send marketing messages. How many people here subscribe to Groupon? Living Social. How do you get your daily updates? Email. You don't communicate to people anymore via email. So there's been this fundamental major reordering of things that we thought we understood. And we'll continue to see that. The biggest opportunity right now is where social and group and local and hyperlocal and mobile and real time and video intersect. Collaborative buying in real time with your ability to see things in video in real time order is the new $1 trillion business opportunity. truly is. I'm one of the early investors in Groupon. I'm vice chairman of Groupon. It's amazing how that company, I said to Ali, we should reposition FedBid and say, oh, it's Groupon for government. It's not that crazy when you think about it. If we could find ways to collectively amass your buying power, we get even better deals. And that's social and local in real time. And you're going to see a lot of development from us to make sure that you can participate within the FedBid community on your mobile device, on your iPad, getting real-time updates, just one click. We want to play a big role in relevance in that new space. So I think the genie's totally out of the bottle. I think we're participating in the biggest new business ever created, and your skills in procurement, analytics, group buying, those will be kind of the key skills. And the one thing that took me by surprise, I've always been politically astute. I was mayor of my town in Florida for 8 years. I held elected office. The thing that blows my mind is my son, who's grown up living his life on the net, he's 22 years old. He'll go someplace with his friends and he'll shop online and get the best deal on airlines and hotels. And when he bought his first car, he did all his shopping online and almost like put a bid out, if you will, on I know what car I'm going to buy and what color and what I can afford and kind of what do you bid for my business. And as a generation, we're growing up seeing that the internet makes shopping, comparative shopping, easy. Amazon, eBay, Groupon, just everything. That same kind of intelligence hasn't really made its way yet totally into the B2B community or the government sector. And that's a fundamental disconnect. We're really happy with how well FedBid's doing, but it's this much of that big of a buying experience. And like Amazon has your credit card, and it's one-click ordering, and you're buying everything on Amazon. And so I just know it's a matter of time before that switch turns on where businesses and government use these tools to do what they're doing in the real world faster, better, cheaper, more convenient, and ultimately to save money, because that's really what businesses are about, to create value, doing things faster, cheaper, better, till they're free. And that's the other thing with FedBid. We call you our customers. I'm here because Ali says, these are our customers. But you don't pay us anything when you think about it. I mean, it's a remarkable reflection of what's happened in our industry. We expect faster, better, cheaper, till it's free. And again, I don't mean to be an evangelist, but if you save a lot of money and you don't get charged, use it more. Okay, that was my ad. Any other questions?
Hi, Ted. In the sports ownership community, can you name maybe one of your favorite people or leaders?
There's lots of people who are in sports for the right reasons. They see themselves as being, it's almost like being an elected official. I try to be a fan. I try to be visible. I try to do the right things the right way. I mean, when we don't win, I feel as much pain as our fans do. The biggest slur you can make to me, I mean, it kills me, is sometimes I'll read, well, you don't care about winning, you're in it for the money. I know this is going to sound odd. I've never made a single dollar of profit on any of my sports teams. Long term, I think the asset will appreciate, but the winnings, the gain, comes from the collective experience. And boy, if you can win a championship, I don't think there's any price that you can put on that. And so people that pursue it that way, some of the old school owners, the owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers is remarkable. He's about his community. They've made a great franchise. They've won lots of Super Bowls. He's just a beacon in that community. Bob Kraft from the Patriots, he's tried to play that same role. I'm good friends with Mark Cuban. We see some things a little bit differently, but ultimately, we get it. He gets it. He's won his championship, and he's part of it. And so I don't like people who are either really removed from the process. They bought a team. It's like an asset. They don't live in their hometown. They don't really go to the games. Those are the people, I think they're in it for the wrong reason. Okay, anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Dana Theus. I'm a leadership consultant, and I have a leadership question, but first I'm also on the Arlington Economic Development Commission and want to thank you for bringing the Caps to Arlington.
Thank you.
Very much appreciate that. So you're talking about this kind of almost spiritual awakening that we can have as individuals, kind of switching from the success, happiness thing, but you're talking about it also in a cultural context. What are the kinds of wake-up calls that work in cultures to get happiness up front so that people really invest in it? And as an investor, the pressure is not there to invest in happiness. It's there to invest in returns. So I'm wondering about your cultural insights.
Yeah, I think the media world that we live in, where consumerism and I just watched some of the shows that my daughter watches on television when she was growing up, and how celebrity is presented, and we're doing just a disservice to generations on what winning is about, because ultimately the people who are winning, the story's more interesting when they have their fall. And media loves villains. Media loves someone who's, one of my best friends for a decade, a gentleman who passed away, was a guy named Brandon Tartikoff. And he was president of NBC and Paramount Studios. He was such a great, great guy. And he used to tell me that there's 3 acts in the American drama. Act 1 is new kid comes out of nowhere, confounds the experts as an underdog, and wins big. Great story, David and Goliath. Second act is new kid gets too big for his britches, gets pulled in the wrong direction, active evil competitors, fate has a very public fall. And we love that. We love building people, organizations up so that we can be the first one to be the contrarian and make the call. We eat our young. We eat our own that way. We have a star player, Alex Ovechkin. What's wrong with Alex Ovechkin? A front page story. What's wrong with Alex Ovechkin? He lives in a gated community. He used to be amongst the fans. I drive to his new house. He doesn't live in a gated community. There's no fence outside his house. It was convenient for the story, but it wasn't true. He's not as good as he once was. He's only 5th in the league in goals scored. And I just saw it like 2 weeks ago. And then the third act is the comeback. Donald Trump was bankrupt a dozen years ago. Chapter 11. And now he's got these TV shows and clothing lines, and I was going to run for president. It's like, holy mackerel. New kid came out of nowhere, got too big for his britches, very public fall, now comeback. And that's the great thing about our country. We forgive, if you know where you are in any of those acts and you can manage it and embrace it, we do well. The consumerism in you have permission to buy a nice tie and have a home and have a nice car. But we know, I know when the plane was going down, I had just bought a new BMW. And never once did it enter my mind, gosh, I'm gonna miss that new car smell. I mean, that wasn't the thought that entered my mind. And so I do think this concept of it's okay to be successful, but it's more important to be happy. And the happier you are, the more open you are to success. And we can use as teaching aids, well, let's pick a lot of people that are successful, and were they happy? I mean, we just see time and time and time again, the most public falls of successful people. And, I've had my share of them. And if you embrace them as reckonings, and make your list, and then, try to come back from it, apologize, and move on, they're additive to your life and your experience. But I do get concerned the way we portray all these reality TV shows, and it's frightening to think that this is the media that our kids are being exposed to, and this is what's successful. There's this one thing I was watching the other day on YouTube where someone had sent me, there's a 50-year-old, I think, television guy, and he's married like an 18-year-old girl. And the girl is, as you would expect, buxomy. I guess that would be and she now is going to have her own show. And the show was around her buying shoes. That was the first part of the show, shoe shopping. And then the second part of the show was her running around and her shoes hurt her feet. And it was, this is a show on, someone wrote the script and green lit it, and it's an 18-year-old girl married to a 50-year-old guy who's shoe shopping. And so, you know, honestly, the reason I created Snag Films, I coined a term, filmanthropy. Films with a higher calling, movies that matter, films that will activate charitable giving and volunteerism. I didn't think that there was enough of a media that celebrated good work kind of movies. And you know, Snag's proving that people want good fare. They want to be uplifted. They want to be challenged. And, you know, not everyone wants to watch, you know, oh, my feet hurt, which is basically her motto on the show, I guess. And so now you'll start to hear girls running around going, oh, my feet hurt, which I guess is the price you pay for pretty shoes with big heels. All right, well, you all were so kind and for being here, and I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to working with all of you, and hope you'll work with FedBid, and we can be great partners for a long term. Thank you very much.